And now it's time for another edition of What Would Jello Do? And today's topic on this fine sunny day is death. I'm here in my old hometown of Boulder, Colorado. No, for the zillionth time, I'm not from New York or LA like so many people think I am. And this is Bluebell Creek. The reason I point out Bluebell Creek is because, don't back too far away or we won't get the sound, is because normally there isn't even water in it this time of year. Normally, all the time I was growing up, there was barely any water in it at all. But only a couple weeks ago, there was so much water in little old Bluebell Creek. Look what happened. There used to be trees on that side of the creek. There used to be trees on this side of the creek. You'll notice part of the bridge was broken, but no bridge in Boulder washed out. And the mud line goes across the top of the bridge. And there was so much water. One thing people don't usually realize about these flash floods is it's very swift, a lot of water. It can just tumble cars like they're a beach ball. Same with these rocks. I don't think these rocks were even here before. But the other thing that brought me back to Boulder, already kind of traumatized because the old hometown and all the cool cruising roads in the canyons with the old 19th century mining shacks that people had fixed up and lived in, obliterated, is that my father just died. So I came back from that. And for people who are asking, you know, we're holding up well. He lived a good life. He would have been 86 years old in October. So I'm very grateful to have had him with me for the first 55 years of my life, when some of my friends from back here lost their parents clear back in the 1980s when we were in our early 20s. And this isn't nearly as heavy as when my sister and Julie and her husband Clive died in a mountain climbing accident together on Mount Toll in Rocky Mountain National Park. My mother and I both agree that was much more traumatic, and I probably would have had even more trouble with that if I hadn't been through so many tragedies in the music and punk underground of people who died way too young, often for preventable reasons. But when Julie and Clive died, some people back in California said, oh, well, you'll be okay eventually, you'll get over it. And my point was, hey, wait a minute. I don't want to get over Julie. I was just beginning to get to know Clive, and we would have had a lot to talk about once I found the Velvet Underground and Joy Division records in his record collection, and that the Wesley Willis CD I gave them had been opened and listened to, but I never got to talk about them. But what I'm getting to is, closure, I don't think that really exists. I think it's a bogus concept used to sell religion, psychiatric drugs, and even the death penalty, where people who feel like the person that, you know, killed their loved one, they get to watch them be executed by lethal injection or die horribly in a gas chamber, and they feel the same way afterwards. Their loved one was still horribly murdered, and they don't have them there with them. No closure. I mean, the way I process these things, and I'll count Wesley Willis in this category among others as well, is every once in a while, the loss and the grief will still rocket right through me, and I'll break down, I'll let it all out, and then I get up and I move on. And the other lesson to take from this I thought I would pass on is my father started a tradition with the previous generation of, when they died, we'd all sit around and tell stories. Or better yet, it occurred to him to get out the recording device and start interviewing the ancestors. And I later did it with him, luckily. And there's so much information there about how your own family lived, how real people actually lived in this country who weren't famous or historical figures. I mean, who knew that my own grandfather once commuted 8 miles each way to work on horseback to teach in a one-room school, or that later he was a construction worker who helped build the supposedly ancient cliff dwellings people pay money to go to in Manitou Springs, Colorado, let alone my father's tales of trying to reform the mental health system, first in Colorado in the 50s, then through the western United States, or that my great-uncle Norman, who I barely knew, was so out of his mind that he lived all alone on this little farm, ate nothing but a potato and a pork chop every single day, saw no reason to pay for a phone. He'd just climb up a nearby telephone pole and tap in on that rare occasion occasion he felt like calling anyone. When something went wrong with his house, he simply took the entire house apart, brick by brick, and then put it all back together perfectly when he was done fixing it. As they say in the credit card commercials, this kind of stuff is priceless. So, before it's too late, even if you don't totally get along with them, get your recording devices out and start recording those older members of your family. Believe me, you will treasure it forever.